It started as a quiet Christmas Eve. My son, Lucas, was finally asleep upstairs, and the living room was lit by the soft glow of the Christmas tree. I sat on the floor, surrounded by rolls of wrapping paper and unboxed toys, trying to make everything perfect. My husband, Tom, was away for work, but I didn't want Lucas to feel like anything was missing. As I was cutting a ribbon, I heard it. A faint creak, like a step on an old wooden floor. I froze, my scissors hovering midair, and strained to listen. It sounded like it came from above. The attic. Our house wasn't that old, but it made its fair share of noises, pipes knocking, the wind rattling the windows. I told myself it was nothing, just the house settling. I went back to rapping, but then I heard it again, this time louder. It wasn't just creaking. There was a soft, deliberate scratching sound, as if something, or someone, was clawing at the attic floorboards. My heart started pounding. I tried calling Tom, but it went straight to voicemail. I wasn't sure what to do. Grabbing a flashlight, I decided to check on Lucas first. His room was at the end of the hall. I opened the door quietly and peeked inside. He was sound asleep, clutching his favorite stuffed bear. Feeling a little braver, I decided to take a quick look in the attic. If I didn't, I knew I'd spend the entire night imagining all sorts of terrible things. The attic door was a pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling. As I tugged the cord, the ladder unfolded with a creak that made me jump. I hesitated before climbing. My flashlight beam trembled as I scanned the dark, dusty space. Nothing seemed out of place. Boxes of old decorations, a couple of suitcases, and some cobwebs. I stood there for a moment, listening. Silence. Maybe I was imagining things. Just as I was about to turn back, my phone buzzed in my pocket. The sudden vibration startled me so badly that I nearly dropped the flashlight. It was Tom. "Jenna," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Where's Lucas?" My stomach dropped. "He's in bed," I said. "Why?" "We've been trying to call you," he said, his words rushing together. "The neighbors found him outside in the snow. He's here with me now." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "What are you talking about? I just checked on him. He's asleep in his room." "No," Tom said firmly. "He's here, Jenna. He's not talking. He's freezing. What's going on?" I didn't even respond. I hung up and bolted down the ladder, racing to Lucas's room. I flung the door open, and my heart sank. The bed was empty. Panic took over as I ran downstairs. And there he was. Lucas was sitting in the middle of the living room floor, staring at the Christmas tree. His pajamas were damp, and his skin was pale, like he'd been outside for hours. "Lucas!" I knelt in front of him, grabbing his shoulders. "What happened? How did you get outside?" He didn't answer. His eyes slowly shifted to mine, wide and frightened. Then, in a whisper so soft I barely caught it, he said, "Mom, don't go up there. It's waiting." I felt a cold wave wash over me. Before I could respond, there was a loud thud from above. Something heavy had just moved in the attic. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. Grabbing Lucas, I backed toward the front door, keeping my eyes on the ceiling as the thuds grew louder, closer, as if something was following us. We ran to the car. I didn't even bother grabbing our coats. I drove straight to Tom's parents' house, where he and Lucas were waiting. As soon as we walked in, Lucas ran to Tom and clung to him, as if afraid to let go. That night, we called the police. They searched the house but didn't find anyone. The attic was another story. Everything had been overturned, and in the middle of the floor, carved into the wood, was a strange symbol I'd never seen before. It looked like a twisted star, with jagged lines radiating outward. The officers had no explanation. They said it was probably a prank, but I could tell they didn't believe that. Neither did I. We didn't go back to the house. A few days later, we hired movers to pack up our things. I didn't want to step foot in there again. Even now, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't run. What was waiting for me in that attic? And how did Lucas end up outside? No one has answers. All I know is that Christmas will never feel safe again. It was Christmas Eve, and the house smelled of pine and freshly baked cookies. I had been planning Kevin's gift for months, an antique watch he had admired years ago but never bought. It wasn't just a watch. It was the exact one he'd pointed out in a small shop window back when we were dating. Finding it felt like fate. When I handed Kevin the wrapped box that night, my excitement was impossible to hide. He unwrapped it slowly, and as soon as he saw what was inside, his face went pale. His hands trembled as he picked up the watch. Then, like it had shocked him, he dropped it onto the carpet. "Where did you get this?" His voice was low, almost a whisper, but I could hear the fear in it. I blinked in confusion. "I found it online. It's the watch you loved, remember?" Kevin shook his head, his eyes fixed on the watch like it was something toxic. "This isn't possible," he muttered. "What do you mean?" I asked, my chest tightening. He looked at me, his face drained of all color. This is the watch I lost years ago. I threw it away. How did you get it?" I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. "You didn't throw it away. You wore it for years. You probably just forgot." "No," he snapped, his tone sharper now. "I remember. I threw it into the river. I wanted it gone. How is it here?" My stomach churned. Kevin wasn't someone who overreacted. If he was this unsettled, something was seriously wrong. I reached for the watch, intending to look for any clue that might explain this, and that's when I noticed the engraving on the back. It was my name. Sarah, etched deeply into the metal in a way that looked rough and rushed. My hands started to shake. "Did you do this?" I asked him, my voice barely steady. "No," Kevin said, his eyes wide. "I've never seen that before." For a moment, we just stared at the watch, the room suddenly feeling much colder. I tried to make sense of it. Maybe the seller had engraved it, but why? And how could this be the same watch Kevin claimed he threw away? Kevin broke the silence. "There's something I need to tell you." He sat down heavily on the couch, his head in his hands. My heart sank. "What is it?" "I wasn't always clean," he began. "Before I met you, I ran with a group of guys who weren't exactly law-abiding. We did things I'm not proud of. One of them gave me that watch. It was a gift, but it wasn't normal." "What do you mean?" I asked, the unease in my chest growing. "The guy who gave it to me, Alan, said it was special. He said it would always find its way back to me, no matter where I went." I didn't believe him until weird stuff started happening. I lost it once at a bar, and the next day, it was sitting on my dresser. Another time, I pawned it, and a week later, it showed up in my jacket pocket. I stared at him, my mind racing. "So, you threw it away?" "I didn't want it anymore," Kevin said. "It felt cursed, but now it's here." He looked at me, his face full of dread. "And it has your name on it. That means they know about you." "Who knows about me?" I demanded, my voice rising in panic. "Alan's people," Kevin said. "They don't let go of grudges. If they sent this, it's a message." A cold sweat broke out on my skin. "What do they want?" "To make me pay for walking away," Kevin said, "and they'll use you to do it." We didn't sleep that night. Every little sound in the house felt amplified. A branch brushing the window, the creak of the floorboards. Kevin stayed up, pacing the living room with a baseball bat in hand, while I sat on the couch, clutching my phone, ready to call the police at the first sign of trouble. At one point, we heard a knock at the front door. It was soft, almost polite, but in the silence of the night, it sounded like a gunshot. Kevin motioned for me to stay put as he approached the door. He peered through the peephole and froze. "It's just a package," he whispered, but his expression told me there was more. He opened the door cautiously, and there it was. A small box wrapped in red paper. No note, no sender. Kevin brought it inside, his hands shaking. When he opened it, we both stared in horror. Inside was a single photograph of me, taken from outside our house. "We need to leave," Kevin said, his voice urgent. We packed a bag and left that night, driving to a hotel in the next town over. The next day, Kevin contacted an old friend who could help us disappear. It's been years since that Christmas Eve. We've changed our names, moved to a different state, and started over. But every time I see a wrapped gift, I feel a pang of fear, wondering if they've found us again. Christmas dinner was supposed to be a fresh start. I hadn't seen my sister Jenny in over 5 years, not since that explosive fight that tore our family apart. But after so much time, I thought it was time to move on. It was Christmas, after all, a season of forgiveness. I spent the whole day preparing. The smell of roasted turkey filled the house, and the table was set with the best plates I owned. As the clock struck 6, Jenny arrived, holding a neatly wrapped box. She smiled faintly, but her eyes held something I couldn't place. "Thanks for inviting me," she said, stepping inside. "Of course," I replied, hugging her stiffly. "It's been too long." Dinner started awkwardly. The clinking of forks against plates was louder than the conversation. We talked about safe topics, work, the weather, but there was an unspoken tension in the room, like we were both waiting for something to crack. It wasn't until dessert that things shifted. I had made my signature pecan pie, something Jenny used to love. She took a bite and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "This reminds me of Mom's cooking," she said, setting her fork down. I nodded, forcing a smile. She did make the best pies. Jenny leaned back in her chair, her fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass. "Do you ever think about her? About those days?" I hesitated. "Sometimes, but it's been a long time." Her smile twisted into something sharper. "I think about it all the time, about how things were before you left." A chill ran down my spine. "Jenny, I didn't leave. You know that. I had to move for work." Her eyes darkened. "That's not what happened, Rachel. You left because you wanted to escape. From me." I stared at her, my throat tightening. "That's not true." Jenny leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Do you remember the time in the attic? When you locked me up there for hours?" My breath caught. I hadn't thought about that in years. I was just a kid, and we were playing hide and seek. I'd locked her in as a joke, but I forgot to let her out until our parents came home. She had been furious. "It was an accident," I whispered. "Was it?" Jenny's tone was icy. "You knew I was terrified of the dark. You knew what you were doing." I didn't know what to say. My hands were trembling, and the room felt suddenly colder. Jenny's voice softened, almost tender. "You know, I forgave you for that a long time ago. But there are other things I can't forget." She began recounting memories, things from our childhood that I had buried deep. But the more she spoke, the more I realized something was off. Jenny wasn't just recalling our shared past. She was describing things I had never told her, private moments, thoughts I'd never shared with anyone. "How do you know all this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jenny tilted her head, her smile unnerving. "I've always known, Rachel. You think you can bury the past, but it never really goes away." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I think you should leave." Jenny stayed seated, looking up at me calmly. "It's not over, Rachel. You're not safe." My heart pounded as I backed away, but before I could reach the door, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. It was sudden and overwhelming, like my heart was being squeezed in a vice. I collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. Jenny knelt beside me, her expression almost serene. "You shouldn't have invited me," she said softly. "But I'm glad you did. It made this so much easier." I tried to speak, but my throat felt like it was closing. My vision blurred, and the room spun around me. Through the haze, I saw her pick up my wine glass, swirling the remnants of the drink. "It's funny," she mused. "I've been planning this for years, waiting for the perfect moment. Christmas seemed fitting, don't you think? A time for endings and beginnings." The realization hit me like a freight train. She had done something to the food or the wine. I had let her into my home, my life, and she had been waiting for this moment all along. As the darkness closed in, I saw Jenny standing over me, her face calm and satisfied. The next thing I remember was waking up in a hospital bed. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive, that whatever I had ingested hadn't been enough to kill me. But Jenny was gone. She had vanished without a trace, leaving no evidence behind. Now, every Christmas, I look over my shoulder, wondering if she's still out there, waiting for another chance to finish what she started.